Hello, and welcome back to the Richard Taliaferro podcast, where we take a look at career insights and give advice to career changers. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Today's guest is Andy Regal, author of the new book, Surviving Bully Culture, a career spent navigating workplace bullying and a guide for healing. Andy is an award-winning media executive, workplace bullying expert, and speaker. He worked his way up to executive producer, executive VP of programming, and VP of original programming at major media organizations such as Court TV, CNBC, and MSNBC. He also served as global head of video at the Wall Street Journal, where he was my boss for a time. Andy, welcome to the podcast.
Richard, great to be with you.
Always good to be with you and great to see you again.
Thank you.
I want to start out by asking, what's been the reception for the book been like for you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. It was a long time in coming, Richard, and we've had a chance to talk a little bit, but it took about 4 years to write.
Okay.
And my biggest concern was I really didn't know if the book was simply, to be honest, a vanity project, something that I thought was interesting. It was my story. And I had no idea whether other people, although I tried to write it in a relatable way, a meaningful way, I didn't know how it would be responded to. And now that it's been out for a few weeks, I'm getting several responses. First of all, one of them is, I'm so sorry that you went through this.
You're right.
I'm sorry for your pain kind of thing,
Sure.
which is appreciated. When people say that to me, they often say, can I tell you what happened to me? So
Okay.
that's why I wrote the book, because I really did think and know over time after research and writing that millions upon millions of people experience workplace abuse, workplace incivility, workplace degradation. So that's one thing. I'm so sorry you went through this. Can I tell you what happened to me? The other thing that people are responding to is, I had no idea that this was all legal, and why is it legal? We can talk about this in our conversation.
Yeah.
And so it's been a very nice response, a good response, a validating experience, which is part of the reason I wanted to write the book, to validate my own experience and validate the experience of so many workplace bullying victims. And then if I can be a little self-promotional, the response by the publishing industry has been quite strong. Kirkus Review is the premier book review company in this country, and they gave me a star review, which is their highest rating, and they just announced in the last few days that my books can be a book of the month selection for them, which is really rare and hard to get. So I've been very gratified that people seem to be enjoying the writing and finding meaning in the message.
Yeah, and congratulations on all of that. That's fantastic. And it speaks to how resonant your experiences were and how people have connected with you with these experiences. I mean, what are some of the people, you had people come up to you and say, let me tell you about what happened to me. What kind of, experiences have you seen from them in terms of the bullying that they've gone through?
Yeah, I really appreciate the question. So I would say this, Richard, that when I started writing the book, I was astonished to find that there were other people like me who had experienced this kind of thing. I didn't even realize that it was workplace bullying until I started writing the book and finally decided to go online and do some research. I never went to HR. I thought, this is, in my case, and you understand this, this is television, this is media, this is live television,
Yeah.
and this is what I asked for. This is what I came to New York for, and I should to be gendered about it, I should man up, I should toughen up. And what I found was that this is a real thing that just hasn't gotten the attention it deserves. And so, as I mentioned a moment ago, I was astonished to find these really good, devoted, hardworking, loyal people who had experienced this incivility. Now, to be honest, I'm shocked when I meet somebody who says, oh, that's never happened to me. It's rare that I meet somebody who has never experienced this, and good for them.
Mm,
The
yeah.
responses I get, and the point I want to make to you and your audience is, while I thought it was all about media, television, New York, yes, it involves those things, but this is happening everywhere in every industry. It doesn't matter. It's the legal profession is particularly bad, healthcare is bad, tech is bad, education is bad.
Mm,
It happens everywhere. And I tend to say, where you find people at work, you'll find bullying at work. It's just part of the conflict of work, having very little to do with television or media or Broadway. We hear about it in
sure.
Hollywood, we hear about it on Broadway.
Mm,
But the responses I'm getting from all kinds of people are extreme circumstances. I talked to somebody yesterday who worked at a financial institution. She just lost her job after 4 years of being bullied, and
mm.
two of her colleagues just left and ended up in the hospital
Oh,
because
wow.
of the same boss, and they left the job without another job. Can you imagine that this is happening to good people?
Mm,
The abuse that they're experiencing is so bad that even without another job, and that's the issue here. It's an abuse of power, and we can talk more about this, but our
yeah.
bosses have so much power over us that often we just have to take it or leave it, which both are bad outcomes. And I'm working with a number of other people to change that.
Yeah. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about the dynamic where workers feel like they're in a situation where they can't get out of it or they have to take it. It's like, where in your experience and in your research, where does that idea come from?
Well, it's reality based in many respects, Richard, and it does depend on where you work. Obviously, it is workplace specific.
Mm,
But that said, it's very rare that HR is going to help you. I never went to HR because I thought I needed to deal with it on my own. And I'd say this to anybody in your audience that feels as though they're a bully victim. It's not you, it's them. Now, having said that, if you are coming to work late, not doing assignments, that's a different story. And
right.
I can't, I would just suggest you do a better job. I'm advocating for the people that are the great employees. And those are often the ones that are targeted for a variety of reasons. But the reason that so many people feel alone and helpless is because HR gets paid by the boss. Their first and foremost responsibility, if not obligation, is to the company. And one of the biggest problems we have in this work is that HR doesn't have the authority or the autonomy to truly investigate these claims and do something about it. So oftentimes it's even worse for bullying victims to report this to HR. There are ramifications for doing so. And often the bully boss is somebody who's signing the checks. In my own career in television, the worst bully boss I ever had was the CEO of the company. And so how
Mm,
in the world was it? So, and I was also, as you know, Richard, I was an executive producer. And when we worked together, I was global head of video at the Wall Street Journal.
yeah.
So I was a senior leader
Yeah.
for, since the time I was 32 years old, I was an executive producer.
Mm,
So I felt it was my job to shield my staff from it. And I certainly didn't want to look weak by expressing the pain that I was experiencing. So it was my job to pretend like it wasn't happening. So I
mm,
think most people do that. You can't tell your colleagues, you don't want to acknowledge you're being bullied,
right.
even if they may know it. You can go home if you have a supportive family, but people at home can't change the situation.
Sure.
HR can't help you.
Yeah.
And no one's going to jump in and say, "Hey, stop that bully boss," because then they're going to be a target, or worse, they're going to get fired. So it's just kind of like on the playground. Everyone's watching this happen. They're happy it's not happening to them, and it just goes on. Now in the playground, you hope that a principal or teacher might step in. In most cases in the office, there's no such person that's going to come to rescue you.
There's little to no recourse for somebody in a situation like that. So, you think?
Oh, no question. I mean, there's no laws against it,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
So, in other words, if we have civil rights codes
Yeah.
against harassment in the workplace, and that includes people of color, in my case, perhaps age discrimination, right? If somebody came to me and said, "Hey, old man, we don't like your kind. We don't need your
Yeah.
old ideas here. We need young people here." I would have a cause of action and I could go to a lawyer. Now, whether I'd win the case or not is a whole different story.
Sure.
Most people don't have the money to retain a lawyer, but at least in terms of gender, sexual preference, disability, age, and so forth, you do have recourse. What my book is about and what I'm about is working to give employees recourse, because unless you can prove a case of discrimination, you have, till this point, you've had very little recourse. A lawyer won't take your case because it's not illegal. Uh, and so what are you going to do? You can go storming into the boss's office and tell them off. I don't think that's a good strategy. And by the way, I have a coaching business, as I know you do.
Yeah.
I have a coaching business where I coach bully victims to cope and heal. And I do not recommend storming into the office, nor do I necessarily recommend going to HR unless you have a friend in HR who you can confide in and see what the situation is. So it really is, as you said very aptly, you really have little or no recourse.
And it's really a shame that HR can't do anything, it seemingly, because, it's in a situation that you just described, bully bosses chase away good workers. And how can that help the company bottom line if some of the best people that you have in the office can't stand being around the boss that's there?
Richard, I wish leaders were as smart as you are. Right? It's a simple notion, but so many companies overlook it for a variety of reasons. The American Psychological Association estimates that $300 billion are lost every year by virtue of things like burnout, absenteeism, loss of productivity, healthcare costs, and litigation costs. Okay, so let's even make the strange assumption, the extreme assumption that you're a boss or an owner of a company and you don't care about your employees. I'm making the extreme example.
Okay.
You should care about your business. And
Exactly.
to the point that you're making, we have a thing in the work I do called a brilliant jerk. And I experienced brilliant jerks in my career. A brilliant jerk in this circumstance is the person that is very handsome or good looking, very charismatic, great in a meeting, and may even be a terrific salesperson, maybe a rainmaker. But the problem is they're a jerk. They're brilliant. They may be very smart. And oftentimes the bully is very smart, very charismatic, but they cause so much damage to the entire team or to the entire floor that there's research that we have now, which comes from Rippling, which is a big company that helps HR companies with their software. They've done research and data on the damage that the brilliant jerk does. And oftentimes, in so many cases, no matter how much the brilliant jerk is bringing in, the damage they do is more so than their salary and the money they bring in. So that's what we have to guard against. And it's good for everybody, Richard. It's good for the business. It's good for the employees. It brings down your insurance premiums because people aren't. And in my coaching practice, a number of my clients come from psychiatrists who are seeing patients who are explaining that much of their hypertension, digestive problems, depression, anxiety, or worse. I've had clients who have harmful thoughts, intrusive thoughts.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not a doctor. So if they're in that situation, I refer them, but mostly they're out of it. So I'm not suggesting that I can help people with suicidal thoughts, but I just want to say it comes to that. The damage is so severe, it comes to that. And that costs the businesses money, and it costs the people their emotional well-being, their physical well-being, their self-esteem, their self-identity. So it's crucially important. If you don't want to look at it as a human problem, I mean, this is a healthcare crisis in this country, no question.
No question.
It's also a business crisis in this country.
Yeah. And that really, I guess, confuses me in that this type of behavior costs, as you just said, hundreds of billions of dollars. Why, I'm just struggling because why allow that engagement in that behavior when you know it's going to cost you 9 figures, on a national scale? It's just confusing to me.
Yeah. Well, it's also confusing to me why anybody would want to harm their best employees. And it happens all the time. You've seen it. And so I have to admit, I don't, because I don't have the qualifications, I don't spend a lot of time trying to diagnose bully bosses. I don't have access to them, and I don't have the expertise to diagnose them. But some of the things that come into play are such things as they're egoists. Their egos, they like to abuse the power. They get off on it, if you will. Um, there are people that are narcissists and
Mm-hmm.
don't have, and there's research on this, but that don't have the empathy indicator.
Mm-hmm.
Empathy is not part of their makeup. And so and I had a boss who I used to call kind of a bully sniper. You'd be a target and he'd shoot at you and then he'd move on to the next person, probably not even think about it. Whereas you were left just absolutely beside yourself
Mm-hmm.
because now he doesn't like me. My career is at stake. My salary is at stake. My self-esteem, my self-identity. How am I going to pay for groceries, college, mortgage, whatever those things are? And so uh, uh, it doesn't really matter what. Maybe they're in a bad marriage. They had a bad mother.
Mm.
It,
Yeah.
the point is that we need to focus on making these people better. And we can't allow them to continue to be bad actors. Sometimes it's the top person, and that's a very difficult situation. And who's going to go to the top person, the CEO or the founder of the company, and say, hey, you know, very tough
Mm-hmm.
to do. But if it's a number two or number three person, which I've experienced myself too, a lot of time these people manage up very effectively so the boss doesn't see it.
Yeah.
And managers, leaders, bosses, CEOs, and founders need to be aware of what their managers are doing to their direct reports because it's kind of thing like, oh, well, he's doing great or she's doing great. She's bringing in money, and they don't pay attention to how they're treating their direct reports and how much they're hurting the overall company. We've got to get a handle on this. I'm not advocating for firing people automatically, but we've got to give management consulting and leadership training to these people so that they understand. And by the way, if I may, real quickly,
Sure.
given that there's no laws against this, what I'm advocating for is a very simple thing.
Okay.
Every company should have a 1 or 2 page bylaws or codes of conduct that everybody signs on to.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just like with sexual harassment, we in almost every job, you watch a video, you have to answer a bunch of questions, and we should.
Yeah.
And then you have to sign on that you understand what sexual harassment is and you understand that it's wrong and you're not going to do it. If there are indications that you are acting inappropriately in the case of sexual harassment, or let me make it workplace incivility,
Mm-hmm.
there need to be ramifications or repercussions for that behavior, which means you get talked to. If you keep doing it, it should affect your bonus and your ability to move up in the company. And ultimately, if you can't handle yourself in a way that's appropriate by virtue of these codes of conduct,
Yeah.
you have to be let go. That's what we need, and we don't have near enough in this country until we get actual laws on the books.
I mean, it's again, I mean, it just feels like a no-brainer to be able to protect your team that way against the brilliant jerks that you've come across, and that every listeners and viewers of this podcast have come across in their careers as well. And it's just really a case of one of the things I wonder about is for bullying victims, what is the story that they tell themselves about what's happening, about dealing with that brilliant jerk? Why is this person targeting me? I mean, have you come across situations where your clients have been wondering, like, why me? Why did this person search me out as the target for their abuse?
Oh my gosh, yes. Every one of us, including me, my entire career pretty much. And I say in my book
Yeah,
that I'd say about 25 out of the 30 years, maybe 27, I experienced workplace incivility and degradation. 27 out of the 30 years. I had
that's wild.
three
That's
years
wild.
where I had really good bosses,
Mm,
3 years. And so let me go back just a little bit because that's such a great question, Richard. And so let me say it this way.
okay.
I want to define what I see as bullying.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
My definition is repeated and targeted behavior repeated and targeted behavior that has no benefit to the employee or the business. Okay? So when you put that kind of structure together, I'm not looking for a business or an office that is utopian. I'm not arguing for every boss to put their arm around you and say, "Great job, Andy. You're the best." Okay. Believe me, you worked with me.
No.
We all know it doesn't matter where you work. It is not like being on a beach in Hawaii. It's
No, no, indeed.
right. And there's conflict and there's problems, but that's why I talk about repeated and targeted behavior that has no benefit. Let me give you an anecdote, if I may.
Sure.
Bully boss that I had, and I think this illustrates the point, and it's in my book, Surviving Bully Culture, which you were kind enough to mention in the introduction. Okay, so I have a boss, a new boss. The boss that I really liked was let go. Now I'm reporting to a boss out of Central Casting. I'm working at a sports media company, and he is about 6'4", 215, looks like a football player, and in fact was a college football player, okay?
Okay.
He's 10 years my junior. I have no problem with that. I just want to do a good job. He's the number 3 guy in the company. I have no problem with that. He's handsome. He looks great in a suit, as I was alluding to. He is, okay? So I've worked for him for a month, and he emails me, and it's not going well. There's not a lot of communication. Everything's very curt. And he emails me that I need to put his name on every email that I send out. He wants to be CC'd. Now, keep in mind, at that point, I'm like 40 years old. I had been an executive producer for 8 years, multi-million-dollar budgets. I had staffs of 35 to 50 people before this job, and now this guy's going to micromanage me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, why does he want to do that? Because in my mind, he wants to hinder my ability to succeed. He's going to stop anything I'm working on. If I start working on something that's going to be successful, he's going to take credit for it. But that's what I'm fearing. Okay. But I certainly feel micromanaged.
Yeah.
So I'll get to the point. So I decide, we're 2 guys, we're at a sports media company. I'm just going to ask him, let's go to lunch. Let's get out of the office and talk about not so much how we're working together or not working well together, but let's talk about some programming ideas. Get out of the office, have some lunch, get to know each other a little better. We knew each other, but, get out and maybe get into how can I work better with you? I feel like, whatever, just a collegial lunch.
Sounds very reasonable.
Okay. Right. Can you imagine? I was frightened, my heart beating before I was going to ask it. I'm 40 years old. Now, you could say, what a wimp you are. That's one way to look at it. I look at it as it was an abuse of power. I knew this guy had my career in his hands, and this was my dream job. Okay. So I go to his office a few times, heart beating out of my chest, and he's not there. Finally, he's there. Our offices were like 3 doors down from one another.
Okay.
I peek in. I don't even really have the bravado to walk in. Okay. So I just kind of lean in and I'm like, hey, what would you think about grabbing some lunch and talking about some programming ideas? And I don't know if am I allowed to use 4-letter words on this podcast?
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay. I want to ask him. He says to me, he's looking down as I walk in. Then he just looks up like without expression. He goes, Regal, we don't need to break fucking bread. You just need to do your fucking job. Okay. Then he looks back down, and essentially dismisses me. Okay. Now I'm a 40-year-old man with a family, and I'm vice president of original programming. Now you shouldn't talk to anybody
like that. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'll ask you, Richard, did that conduct have any benefit to me? Did that help me do my job better? Did it help the company or the organization in some way? I would argue no. And you asked me the question. I'm doing it in a roundabout way. I hope you don't mind.
No,
but
go for it.
You asked me, you're like, why me? What did I do? And I'm always, even to this day, and this was 15 years ago, maybe more. I'm still defensive in telling stories like this because I feel like people are saying, well, you must have done something to piss him off. And I can honestly tell you and your audience, I mean, you know me, so it's a little bit different. But, and by the way, I want to be clear on one point too. I'm not expecting bosses to be great all the time. I had my bad moments. You may have seen some bad moments that I had when we worked together. We're all allowed a bad day. We're allowed to be hangry, low blood sugar. We had a bad day at home. Bosses, I'm fine with that.
We're
But
all human. We're all
right,
human.
but it can't be targeted and it can't be repeated. And I think this is true in every case. If I acted inappropriately as a boss, I apologized. I went home, felt terrible, and
Mm.
apologized. I had a boss for 6.5 years that mistreated me, uh, never once apologized, and also never thanked me for the hard work and great work I was doing. And this
Wow.
particular football playing boss,
Mm-hmm.
there was no problem with my work. It wasn't like I was asking for lunch and he's saying, you need to do a better job. Nobody had ever said to me before, and he certainly hadn't, that I was doing anything except stellar work. But that's as good an example in my mind of bullying. Now, there's worse examples, there's lesser examples, but when I talk about my definition, that's a good example of my definition.
I mean, it's puts a situation like that puts a an undue burden on you because you're trying to make the company better. You're trying to, you're coming up with ideas. You want to bring people in, and this guy just simply dismisses you.
Right. And you
Doesn't
ask the
even, yeah.
question. Yeah, dismisses like a sergeant or a general to a private, with disdain.
Hmm.
And so you
Hmm.
asked me the very good question of we do feel, why me? What am I doing wrong? And many of us, and this is what I did in a number of different scenarios and roles that I had, Richard, I went back and tried harder. I felt horrible for myself. Why me? What's wrong with me? Why does he hate me? And what can I do to fix it? And oftentimes what you can do, and what I do in my coaching practice, which we can talk about if we have time,
Okay.
there's better ways of coping and healing. But I don't coach, and I'd love to find someone who can make that leader my best friend or make
Yeah.
him a good leader. Now, if the CEO had jumped in, or if I felt comfortable and I thought if I go to the CEO, he'll either laugh at me or he'll take the side of the number three guy in the company who he likes a lot. So
Hmm.
what we have to do is we say, why me? Okay, he may have felt threatened by me. A lot of us like to think that the bully boss feels threatened. And maybe he did because I was in video, he was overseeing me. He was not a video guy. Maybe
Yeah.
that was it. A lot of times we think that the bullies don't like the fact that we have empathy, that we're well liked, and it bothers them. There's any number of reasons why that might have happened.
Hmm.
Um, Again, he may just be an egoist. He may just be a guy, a sadist who likes to treat people that way, Richard. And what we need to do is work on how we don't let these people overtake our self-identity, overtake our self-esteem. That's the problem when we allow the bully boss to dim our light and to ruin us.
Yeah, because what happens is we as bullying victims carry this stuff home. We carry it home to our spouses, our partners, our children, our extended family, and they don't get the best of who we are after work, or on the weekends because we are constantly battling and being dragged down by a boss who just doesn't give a damn about us.
Or worse, wants to damage us, Richard,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Right.
And in the work I do, and I think in the work you're doing, there's a thing that I learned about called mattering. We need to make the people, excuse me, in our life, right? But at work, we need to feel that the people that are reporting to us, working with us, that they matter.
Yes.
It's so crucially important.
Yes.
And again, to your great point, because it resonates with me, I had experiences where a particularly bad experience of a toxic work environment when I had a newborn and a 2.5-year-old. And I was not a good father at that time. I was not a good partner at that time. And what I work on with clients is, because we do have the bully boss on our shoulder. We do have the bully bosses. I've had clients, and this happened to me, where they drive all the way home, half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, and they don't even remember the drive
Yep.
because the bully boss is in their head.
Hmm.
What I work with people is how to say, thanks for coming with me on my drive. Thank you for coming, boss, you can leave now. And what I work with people on is remembering who they are. They were good employees before this job. They'll
Mhm.
be good employees after this job. And they need to separate hard work, but it's true. You need to separate your self-esteem and your self-identity from what the bully boss is saying and how they're making you feel.
Absolutely. Now, there's something you touched on in your book, and it's called the heavens reward fallacy.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think, we're driven by doing good work, but is that good work enough to beat back a bully boss?
Yeah. Yeah, I love this aspect that I've learned over time and that I included in the book. And you've said it right. The heavens reward fallacy, which is that many of us, if we, as children, if we had functional families and we were good kids, we got accolades back. If we worked hard in school, teachers said, "Oh, good job, Richard. Good job, Andy. You're a good student." If you were a good kid, parents are often, "Hey, I'm very proud of you," that kind of thing. And not all of us had those kinds of parents. I did. And so I thought when I go into the workplace, if I do the same things, work hard, loyal, devoted, first one in, last one out, and produce, I'm going to get it back. That's
Yeah,
the fallacy
yeah,
that you think, and we can even take it out of the paradigm of bullying. It's just in the workplace and sometimes in life, doing the right thing doesn't necessarily mean that riches are going to fall upon you.
true.
That when you, and in fact, people that I've been getting a response to my book that people are buying it for their kids, for their adult children
Interesting.
to so that and I actually started writing the book because my kids are that age that they're about to enter the workforce, and I wanted them to have a better idea that wasn't so naive, a better, not that they should brace themselves for bullying, only know that it's tough out there and not everyone's going to treat you justly. And so that's the fallacy, that if you do all the right things, that it's going to work out beautifully and everyone's going to treat you well and bonuses are going to come and promotions. It doesn't always work that way. So I love that part of it. And that's one of the best things about the book, I think, is it does put in perspective in any industry that the one thing we do have control over, we don't have control over who our boss is or how they treat us necessarily, although we can try, is we do have complete control over how we respond to it. And if I can say one other thing real quick,
Yeah,
Richard,
yeah.
is I dedicate my book to those that shed their light on others. That's who the book is directed to,
Mm,
because people that are good leaders and good managers make us better, and we all
absolutely.
walk together. And I
Absolutely.
hope that as often as I could, I did that. I hope bully bosses dim our light. And what we do have control over is it's not that we're not going to care what they say. Of course we are. It's not going to, that we won't be depressed, but we don't want it to be all encompassing such that the things like that happen to me, that it affects your physical well-being, your emotional well-being, your
Mhm.
ability to enjoy your life, that they take the joy out of life. You can't enjoy ice cream. You can't enjoy a walk in the woods. You can't enjoy your partner or your kids. And that is the very worst part of all of this.
Absolutely. Where it's just, even though you've left the office and you're, you know, do, you know, doing whatever during the weekend, that narrative is still rotating around in your head.
It becomes like a rumination.
Yeah.
And I know when it happened to me, I couldn't, like, I'm a sports fan. I couldn't enjoy, I know you are, I couldn't enjoy watching sports. I couldn't enjoy food. And if I can, and this is completely free, but I have something that I'd like to offer your audience. It's
Sure.
completely free.
Yeah.
Um, it's a bullying recovery guide, and it's available at bullyingrecoveryguide.com, completely
Yeah.
free. And it goes into all the things we're talking about here.
Hmm.
It's my 6 tenets of coping and healing, and it's how to separate yourself from the boss's rage, if you will,
Hmm.
or at least the boss's incivility, and how to cope and heal with it better. So you can go into work remembering who you are and remembering that you are good, you are talented, you deserve better, and not to let it all seep into you so it dims your light. So it's
Yeah.
bullyingrecovery.com, completely free to anybody who hears this or is listening.
And we'll put a
You're
link to
watching.
that into the show notes
Thank
for
you.
the
Thank you.
podcast. And
Yeah.
I I also want to just touch on what you just said, where one of the things I like to talk about in my writing and with my clients is agency. And bully bosses have a unique knack of trying to take your agency away. And the work that you're doing is really making sure that people re-engage with their own agency.
Yeah, same thing, right? And I love that word. I really love that word, and I use it on occasion, but it's a great word, right? We still have agency. We
Mm-hmm.
may not have power in the workplace. But we have the power to hold on to our self-identity, to keep our agency, even when they're giving us the bad assignments, they're rolling their eyes,
Yeah.
they're being sarcastic, they're
Mm-hmm.
talking behind our back. They're not including us on emails. All these things happen to me. You're not included in meetings or offsites. You're ostracized. And I look at the kind of degree of workplace abuse, and I would put like eye rolling, scoffing, um,
Yeah.
and sarcasm. Oh, you can't see my hands over
Yeah. Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And then the worst of it is when the bosses aren't communicating with you and they're ostracizing you, which both happen to me. And it's all in the book, and it happens to so many people. And that's the most harmful because it's inherent in us to want to be a part of something. You know this, I
Absolutely.
know this. We
Absolutely.
want, and when not only aren't we a part of it, but the person in authority is saying, we don't want you, and
Yeah.
they're not talking to you, and they're certainly not trying to make you better. That's
Mm-hmm.
the most egregious form of bullying because it's targeted, it's repeated, and there's no benefit to me. It doesn't make me better, and it certainly doesn't make the company better by not talking to me and by abusing and punishing me.
Right. And sort of being excommunicated out of the tribe.
Yeah, yeah,
And that brings up all sorts of feelings as well, which are never good.
yeah, yeah. It's the worst form. And I always said where I saw incivility occurring in jobs that I had, I would go to the manager if they were at my level,
Yeah.
with a little bit of trepidation, but I'd say, hey, if we can, why don't we try to make that person better until we decide we need to let them go? And that's your call. It wasn't even somebody
Mm-hmm.
who was reporting to me, but I'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, shouldn't we make them better? Because sometimes I have it all through my book. People forever coming to me saying, what do I do? It's in my book because
Exactly.
people saw me as the
Yes.
empathetic one.
Yeah.
And so people would come to me, even if they,
Mm-hmm.
especially, well, they didn't report to me because I wasn't the bully, but there was a bully boss in their realm. It was the person they were reporting to, and they'd come to me and say, "Hey, can we take a walk? Can I talk to you?" And like, what do I do?
Yeah.
And I didn't have the answer specifically, other than keep doing the best job you can.
Okay.
And when the time comes, you'll decide what's best for you. But
Mm-hmm.
we worked on, I'm here for you, I'm supporting you, and we can work on so it isn't all destructive. But I didn't have much advice on how to change the bully boss, but I went to their manager and I might just say, hey, why don't we at least work to make him better until we decide we got to let him go? And if somebody needs to be let go for the right reasons, I'm not opposed to that. Again, I'm not here for kumbaya,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm here for protecting and taking care of and making your best employees even better because
Yeah.
that's best for everybody.
And that's what you're trying to do in that situation was instead of trying to engage, instead of trying to fight the bullying, you're trying to help move the ball forward and give a positive solution to the situation.
Absolutely, because that's what you're getting paid for as a manager, as a
Hmm.
leader. And again, if there's somebody who is showing up late, no, you deal with that. And if you have to have a stern conversation with somebody because they're not listening, they're not doing the job, they're falling down on the job, you want to understand why, you want to understand what's going on. And I'll say one other thing that's
Yeah.
really important here, Richard.
Sure.
Uh, I had an executive consultant at the Wall Street Journal, actually.
Okay.
And when I became global head of video, they gave me somebody, assigned somebody to me because they identified me as somebody that was going to grow with the company. And so, great, bring it on.
All right.
And she was terrific. It's in the book. But what I will say is this, as managers and leaders, here's the thing. The most important thing is listen, don't judge.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I never got. I got bosses that just assumed something or flew off the handle, didn't ask questions. I had people punish me and never speak to me again. And to this day, I don't know what I did wrong, literally.
Hmm.
Okay. And so oftentimes leaders, managers, they decide on some form of action, negative action,
Yeah.
and don't even talk to the employee. Maybe they would have found out. Maybe somebody was saying something that wasn't true.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody died and therefore I had to go to a funeral and didn't get something done. Who knows? So as managers, we'll solve a lot of the problems between leaders, managers, bosses, and employees if the people with the authority listen first before judging.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll remember that forever. I use it with everything I do in my personal life and professional life. And it's what we owe the people in our lives to listen and not judge.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great place for us to wrap this up. And Andy, Andy Regal, the author of Surviving Bully Culture, it's out on Amazon now. It's gotten great reviews. I think it should be required reading for leaders and managers going forward. I really do believe that. So, Andy, thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure, Richard. Been a great interview. I thank you, and it was wonderful to work with you too.
It, Same here, and hope we can do it again soon. If you're looking for work that works for you, come find me at richardtaliaferro.com. Thanks for listening, and talk to you next week.